This is an absolute beginner tutorial for Verse and UEFN, and you're going to build your very own aim training game? Aim training game. Aim trainer game. And specifically, you're going to learn about billboards, you're going to learn about devices, you're going to learn about variables and the editable attribute, and so many other things in both Verse and UEFN. This is also lesson number 6 if you've been taking the Verse programming course. So let's go ahead and get started. Open up UEFN and create a blank template. I'm going to call this Aim Trainer and click Create. Now, you may have seen in the intro video this really cool robot. We're not going to use it in this video. We're going to use simple props to keep it simple. But you can download this for free, Mech Drone, and you can watch this video here to show you how to actually import animations and characters. So what do we want to do in this game? As a programmer, it's important to always think ahead. Think about what you're trying to build. In our case, what I want is an object to appear at random locations, and then we shoot that object, it explodes, and we get points based on how quickly we shoot the target. We'll increase the score, we'll show that score to the player, and we'll get to work with both code and the objects in UEFN. So that's what I want to do, but first things first is I kind of need an object to put onto the screen and move around. So let's do that now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the props folder, and I'm going to search for doll. And you're going to see some dolls here. You can pick any prop that you want. I'm going to pick a doll, and I want to shoot this spooky doll. So here's a little doll right here, and that looks good to me. And if your content browser is not docked, you can dock it by clicking Content Drawer and then dock in Layout like so. And I'll drag mine up here. And so I've got this spooky doll. It's a little too small for my taste, so I'm going to press R on the keyboard and select the middle square there to make it bigger. There we go, got that nice spooky doll. Now this is a one-player game, so I'm going to click this other player spawner and delete it. So ideally, I'll press W for move, is we move back and forth in random locations, different every time. You shoot it and then it dies, explodes, whatever, and you get some points, okay? So we're going to need both code and some devices here. First off, how do we actually get an object and reference it in our code? Well, there's a few ways to do this, but one important thing to know is that when you drag a prop in, whether it's your own prop or from the Fortnite props here, these are called creative props. So what I want to do is have a creative prop in my code that I'm referencing, and I want to move it around from left to right in random locations. So let's do that now. I'm going to go into my code by pressing the Verse button here. And you'll notice there's nothing in this project. So we can create a new Verse file in this project, or back over here in our Unreal editor, we can go to Verse, Verse Explorer. I can right click and go to Add New Verse File to Project. And I'm going to call this Aim Trainer. And I'm going to click Create. Now, if I close this window and go back to my code file, you'll see your aimtrainer.verse. This is your code. I'm going to drag the left-hand side closed here. And so what we want to do is move that prop in different locations. You know, how do you do that? Well, I'm going to show you right now. So we're going to say var, and we'll call this prop of type creative prop equals creative prop. What we're doing here is instantiating a class. And if you're taking the course, we have not covered this yet, but this is how you can instantiate a class. And creative prop is a built-in type. So this is like an int or a float, like we've worked with in the past, or a string, except this is a specific Fortnite type called a creative prop. And we're making it a variable, not a constant, because we need to be able to set this at runtime. And what we're going to do is type in @editable in front of it. And you haven't seen this before because @editable is an attribute, and we haven't talked about this yet. This will allow us to expose that variable in the editor, in the Unreal editor. So I'm going to save this file here, go back to the editor, go to Verse build verse code, and I'm going to click the Creative Devices folder in my project up here at the top called Aim Trainer. And I'll drag it in, and you'll see that our device that we created is here in the editor. And I'll leave it visible in game for now. Notice here on the bottom right hand side, there's a new property called Prop. And I can select my Spooky Dolls 03. But I'm going to first do some cleanup. So I'm going to go here to my Aim Trainer, right click and do New Folder. I'm going to call this Game. I'm now going to select this Spooky Doll 03, right click it, move to Game Folder, and I'll press F2 on my keyboard to rename this to the Trainer Bot, like so. Now if I click my device over here, my Aim Trainer, I'll see that on the prop I can select the Trainer Bot, which I'm going to do now. I'm also going to right click Aim Trainer and move into the game. Okay? Sometimes I like to call this the Game Manager, so it makes sense to me that this thing is managing our game. So I just renamed that to Game Manager. And there is our spooky doll, or now it's our training bot, or doll, or whatever. So that's cool. We've got it in code, but it's not doing anything at all. So we need to fix that. We need to be able to move it to different spots on the screen. Now, I want you to think of a shooting range, okay? It's probably some long type of alleyway looking thing, and there's going to be a left side and a right side. And so what we can do is we can put our object here on the ground and move it to the spots that we want it to be for the minimum and the maximum. In fact, if we really want to be smart about this, we can just go over to our props folder and search for a wall, any wall, it really doesn't matter. We'll just do this agency embossed wall. And what I'm going to do is, first off, I'm going to snap to my grid, click that there, and I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. I pressed just by pressing the R key here. And what I want to do is just move this thing about where I think it should go. Doesn't have to be perfect, okay? And then what I want to do is simply Control or Alt drag, so I'm going to Alt drag that object. Now I'm going to select two objects by holding down Control, and I'm going to Alt drag again, and I'm going to select all four objects now. 3, 4, come on, you can do it. Here, we'll just select them over here, and I'm going to Alt drag again, and now I'll select all of them again here by holding Shift, and I'm going to Alt drag again. It's okay if it's not perfect. So there's one set of walls here. I probably should have picked a different color besides gray. And I'll highlight all of these walls here, and I'm actually going to put them into a new folder. Let's create a new folder here. We're going to call this Walls, and I'll select all of these here, right click and move into Walls. And in the Walls folder, I'll create a subfolder called Left, and I'll grab all of these walls here, right click and move to Left. And now what I can do is Alt drag them again, but this time to the other side of where I want this arena to be. Just eyeball it at this point. It does not have to be perfect. And this is the back side of the wall. It's not the same as the other one, so I'm going to rotate this whole thing like that, 180 degrees, and bring it all the way back here. We're not being very scientific about this. It's fine. I just want two walls here, okay? So we've got two walls, which is really going to be where our bot or our bear is going to show up. So that is good. Now, we're going to go back into our code now that we have a reference point here. And so we've got our prop, but I need to have a minimum and a maximum on the left and on the right, but we need to have the X and the Y and the Z position. We're working with vectors. 3 different points in space is what makes up the location or the translation of an object in Unreal or UEFN. So I'm going to create a new variable, say var, and we're going to call this minimum positions of type vector3 equals vector 3. Now, it's giving us squigglies because we haven't imported it yet. So we'll import that now using unrealengine.com/temporary/spatial math. Okay? And save that there. Now our error goes away. Now, one more thing I want to do is put the @editable keyword here for minimum positions because I want to set that in the editor. A vector 3 is going to have, if I control click on this, it's going to have an X, a Y, and a Z. Okay, this is used in math all the time, vectors, okay? Especially in games. I'm going to copy this editable and paste it here, and we're going to call this maximum positions. The minimum, height, depth, etc., the maximum, all right? I'm going to save this. Go back to the editor, verse, build verse code. Now, if I click my little game object here, you can see I've got minimum positions and maximum positions, X, Y, and Z. Okay, so what should we do? Well, let's just have fun with this. We'll grab our little bear, okay? And I'm going to move it on the left side, and we'll say right about there. So if I look at the little bear's position on our screen here, you're going to see location, -700. So the red, the X is left and right, okay. The Y is back and forward, okay. And the Z is up and down. So for the Z, you know, we don't ever want it to go too low to the ground. So let's keep it right about, let's just keep it right about here. So we're going to say 83 for the Z. So that's the minimum for the Z. So I'm going to click the little computer over here, and minimum positions for the Z, I'm going to put 83. Let's go back to our bear. Okay, so we know that this is left and right, the red here, the X, right? So I'm just going to say -700 is the minimum for the X. So for the X, we're going to say -700. That's as far to the left as we want to go. Now we just need to do the Y. So if we select our bear, the Y is going to be forward and backward. So what is the most minimum we want it to go? Well, let's just keep it to the boundaries of the walls, like so. Right about there is fine. So I'm just going to say -400 just to keep it nice and easy, simple. So click our manager here, and for the Y, -400. Those are the minimums, okay? The minimums, height, closeness, whatever, and then we'll do the maximums now. So we go to the maximum positions. And for the X, let's grab the little bear. Look at my position here. Grab the little bear, and for the X, he's right in the wall, right about there. Okay, 1158, okay? So let's go to the maximum for X is 1158. And then for the height, how high do we want this thing to go? Well, we can make it go nice and high because we want to be able to shoot up. So let's just say right about there. That's our Z, so that's 803. I'll just say 800, select the manager, and go to 800 on the Z. And then lastly, for the Y, I'm going to move this bear down so I can just see where he is. And for this guy, we'll put him way back here for the maximum, which is -6,175, which I'm fine with. -6,175. Click the manager. -6,175. So we've got the minimums and maximums for our little bear. And so ideally what happens is every time we shoot it, it goes to one of those locations. But let's test this out first to make sure that it's actually working. So I'm going to go to my code again. So we got the minimum positions and the maximum positions. So first thing I want to do is really just test that it's working at all, okay? And we also want to write some code to move it to a random location. So let's create a new function or method here called move prop, okay? Void equals, it's not going to return anything, and I'll put the keyword block here just to get the squigglies to go away. So what I want to do is generate a random value between the minimum positions and the maximum positions and then move our prop to where it needs to go. Okay? So let's go ahead and do that now. Get rid of our block here. And I'm going to say rand x for random x. This is a constant. And we're doing type inference here, meaning that we're just inferring the type. We're not specifying what it is because it knows. We're going to say get random float. But oh no, we have a squiggly because we haven't imported that. So up here at the top, using verse.org/random. Now over here, get random float between the minimum position dot x and the maximum position dot x. Okay? And we'll do the same thing here. Rand y equals get random float between minimum positions dot y and maximum positions dot y. And lastly, rand z equals get random float minimum positions dot z and maximum positions dot z. Okay? We've already specified those, minimum, maximum. We're using a built-in function here to get us a random number. These are some constants we're using. This is all basic verse programming, and if you've been taking the course on verse, this should look very familiar to you here. Now, all we need to do is create a new vector based on these random floats that it's given us. And that's pretty simple as well. We're going to say new position equals vector3. So we're going to instantiate a new vector3 class, and as we instantiate it, we're going to pass data into it. So it has an x property, as you remember. So x equals rand x, comma, y equals rand y, and z equals rand z. And I'll control click vector3 again. This is a struct. It's like a class. It has data inside of it, and an x and a y and a z. That's all I'm accessing here. They wrote the code for this, not me. I'm just passing in those random values. Okay, that looks pretty good. So the last thing I want to do is really just teleport that creature to different spots, and maybe we'll do it on a loop just so we can have it go over and over and over again. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to say prop.teleport. And what do we want to teleport? Or we want to say teleport to. We do some square braces this time. And where do we want to teleport this new thing to? Well, we want to teleport it to the new position. So new position. And the next thing it's going to ask for is the rotation. Like, which way is it going to look? We don't want to change that at all. So we'll keep it the same as the current prop. So we're going to say prop.getTransform, parentheses, dot rotation. All right, we're going to teleport there. Now, because this can fail, it has a decides effect. Teleport to is code that Epic Games wrote that can fail. We have to wrap it in an if statement. And if you're taking the course, we have not covered this yet, but this is called a failure context. So I have to put it in the parentheses of an if statement, and then down here you could put a colon and you could write some code. Or in our case, I'm just going to do the other syntax where you have curly braces at the top here without the colon, and we're going to leave it empty. So we're going to move the prop. Now, we haven't actually called this function yet, so on begin, when the game starts, we'll call move prop. Of course, this is only going to call it one time, right? We need to put this in a loop. So how do we put this in a loop? We use the loop keyword like so. And it's going to give us a little error here. Oh, because we're going over and over permanently. So I'm going to tab in the if here, and then we're going to teleport. And then here's what we're going to do. We're going to sleep. There's a new keyword. We're going to sleep for, let's say, 2 seconds, like so, okay? And it's going to give us an error here because what we're doing is we're blocking this function, which we're not allowed to do because it could block your entire game if you just permanently sleep here, right? So what we have to do is here after the parentheses of our function name is we have to use the suspends modifier to say, hey, this function should operate on its own, okay? it's going to suspend in a loop somewhere else, and we don't want to block that, okay? So because it suspends, it's going to allow us to now loop over and over and over again. And then it's going to sleep after each teleport here permanently. One more thing though, move prop. Okay, this is just going to go on forever and ever. And if we wrote code here, nothing would ever be called because it's just going to stick here forever. So to make sure that we could do other things, we're going to type in the spawn keyword. We're going to press tab on move prop. What that means is it's going to allow this to run independently and not freeze anything else, which would allow us to put anything we want right here. Whereas this would never have been reached before. But now it will. It'll throw this off on a new thread, so to speak, and it'll keep going. All right? Now I realize I actually did this incorrectly here. What we need to do is put all of this inside of the loop, otherwise it's going to move to the same position every single time. So I'm going to select our code here, Control X, and I'll just paste it above the code that's right here. Tab and tab and tab. There we go. Now we'll save it. So we want to loop a new position every single time. And then go ahead and push your changes to start the game. Excellent. So as you can see, our little bear is moving to all kinds of different locations. Awesome. So we know this is working, which is wonderful. But now what we want to do is destroy it, and when it's destroyed, we want to give ourselves a score to see how quickly we were able to shoot it so we can improve our aim. Otherwise, what's the point of an aim trainer? So, in order to detect damage, we're going to use a device. I'm going to click Fortnite, then Devices, and we are going to type in manip, as in prop manipulator. We're going to drag this over here into our scene. A prop manipulator will allow us to do different things with props. So on the right hand side over here, I'm going to scroll down and I want to affect all objects in a zone. See that purple zone there? Whatever's inside of that zone, we are going to affect. For the width, let's just go ahead and make it a little wider. That's a little too wide. Let's say 8, let's say 7, and we'll go to a 5. I'll move it slightly over that way. And then for the, I'm going to move it in the middle here. For the, let's try the depth. Let's go ahead and say 10. There we go. Maybe make it 11 and just drag it down slightly. Yeah, so it's sticking out the back, which is great. And then for the height, let's just make this 10. And I'll drag it up a little bit higher. I know that's a little bit high, but in case you want to go real high, you now can do that. So anything that's in that zone will be affected by this device, as you can see here. So make sure that's selected here. Now, we're not actually going to destroy the prop. And the reason for this is a lot of times props cannot be spawned at runtime, at least not at the time of recording with this version of UEFN. Default props can be, but imported props can't be. So technically I could respawn this over and over, but I'm not going to do that because you're probably going to want to bring in your own models and you can't really spawn those. So we are just going to move it around. Therefore, I don't ever want it destroyed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Modify Prop Health. And for the prop health, I'm just going to change this to 5,000, something that's crazy high. The idea is when you shoot it once, I want it, or rather I don't want it to die, but I want it to detect when it's actually hit. Because if it dies, we lose the object and we can't move it anymore, okay? So is prop invulnerable? Don't set that to true. If you set this to true, your damage events won't be called, okay? So give it a high health and modify prop health. And that's all we need for right now. Okay, so now what I want to do is go back into our code and let's go ahead and add our brand new prop manipulator. So var, and we're going to say this prop manipulator, and that's our variable name, of type prop manipulator device equals prop manipulator device. and of course the @editable. If we don't put that attribute on there, we can't connect our thing that's in UEFN to our code. Okay, so another variable. So what do we want to have happen? I want to know whenever our little creature is damaged, so then we can move it to a new location. Okay, so we don't need this loop anymore. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of the sleep, and I will shift tab those back like so. Okay, so prop manipulator. So in my on begin, we need to listen for certain events. If I control click prop manipulator, I can listen for a damaged event. Now we're not destroying it. I talked about this already. Otherwise we won't be able to respawn it. So I'm going to control C here on damaged event. And now what I'll do is back in our code, I will say prop manipulator dot damaged event dot subscribe. And it's looking for me to pass in a function or method. So on here I will put on prop damaged, and inside I'm going to type the word agent. That's a variable I'm creating of type agent colon void equals. We're not going to return anything, and I'll put a block here for now. So I know that on prop damage, or this function here, or rather the damaged event, is going to give me an agent. It says that right here. So I have to listen for that agent, and the agent is the agent that damaged the prop. In this case, it will be the player. And then I'll copy the name of the function and paste it here inside of subscribe. So when the game starts, we listen for all damage events. And what do we want to do when it's damaged? Let's just for now move it to a new location. Okay, so on prop damaged, let's go ahead and say move prop like so. And it's going to yell at me because it has a suspends effect, which I don't need anymore. And I don't need this anymore. We may use spawn later on, but for now, let's clean that up. So on prop damaged, we want to move the prop to a new location. That looks good to me. So what we need to do though, is we need to have some way to have a weapon. So I'm going to go to our devices here and type in item spawner. We want our item spawner. Here it is. So what I'm going to do is just have a weapon in front of the player that they can quickly pick up. So there's our item spawner. I have it selected, and I'm going to go over here on the right hand side, and it says spawn item on a timer. I'll leave that on, but time before first spawn, I'm just going to say 1 second. And respawn, we don't need to respawn it ever. We just need one gun. I'm going to go ahead and click the array there, and inside of it, I want to pick up the weapon I want. In our case, I'll pick an assault rifle. Whatever one you want, go ahead and pick that. An assault rifle, okay? That's there in our item list. So that looks good to me. And 000 is fine. I'm going to right click the item spawner and move it into our game like so, and save it. Excellent. Then I'm going to go to verse, build verse code, and I'm going to click my game manager object, and we need to drag in our prop manipulator. I'm going to minimize these positions so I don't have to see those. And for the prop manipulator, I'm going to click our brand new prop manipulator. So I would expect that back in the code is that when we first start, we're going to listen for events and we're going to move the prop one time. We'll damage the prop, and then we will move it again. So every time it's damaged, we're going to move the prop. That seems like it should work. Let's go ahead and push all changes because we modified some things here in the editor. Picking up the weapon and firing. Pretty cool, huh? So it's definitely working. And that was a very little bit of code and a very little effort altogether. So that's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome what you can do with Verse and with UEFN quickly. A lot of these things, yeah, you can still do it, or you could have done it in 1.0 with a controller, but now you can do it so much more quickly here with the editor, which is really, really nice. And of course, more features and functionality. So looking at our code again, all we're doing is moving things around. But what I want to do is I want to reward the player with points every time they shoot it. And the faster you shoot it, the more points you get, right? You should be able to be rewarded for doing better. So the idea is we have to have some type of timestamp, right? As soon as the bear appears, timestamp. And then as soon as it dies or is shot, timestamp. Compare the timestamp. That's probably what we need to do. So let's go ahead and have a way of giving ourselves a score with the timestamp. So first thing I want to do is have a way to track the time. So in my code, I'm going to say var timestamp of type float equals 0.0. And then what I want to do is any time that we basically start the next round, I want to start a new timestamp, okay? So where it says move prop here, this is probably where we need to have our, in fact, a better phrase for this probably at this point is show next target. So we can rename that, Control C. This is called refactoring, and this is completely normal programming. I don't just make things perfect for you right out of the gate. I need you to see what it's like to be a programmer and how to actually write code. We just refactored that here. Show next target makes a lot more sense here. And then what I want to do is, as soon as we've moved the prop, it's live, and so we need to change that timestamp. So I'm going to say set timestamp. We're going to set the variable, change it, okay, equals get simulation elapsed time, okay? Get simulation elapsed time. Kind of like just a quick timestamp as a float, and we're going to update it every single time. Now, when a prop is damaged, we don't just want to show the next target right away. We need to update the player score, right? We need to do some math there. So we're going to say update score void equals, and right here we'll say update score. So whenever the prop's damaged, let's go ahead and update the score so we can see how much points they earned, how quickly they shot the target, okay? So update score. And what do we want to do in update score? Well, we need to get the current timestamp. So current timestamp equals, or colon equals, get simulation elapsed time. We're doing that again because now that time's going to be further ahead, right? We have one timestamp, now we have the next timestamp, okay? And so that's how much time. And then our, let's say, attack speed, or the speed in which we attacked the target, colon equals, how do you think we get that? If we have a timestamp from before and now a new timestamp, how would we see how fast it took or how long it took the player to shoot that target? It would be current timestamp minus, there it is, timestamp up there, yeah. I lost it for a second. Okay, attack speed is the current timestamp minus the timestamp. And what do we want to do? Well, we want to reward the player if they did an extra good job. So let's have some fun with this, all right? Make a new variable called earned points of type float equals 1.0. So the default point you're going to get for shooting a target is 1, okay? But let's do some simple math and logic for the speeds. So if, in parentheses, attack speed is less than or equal to 1.0, we will say set earned points to be equal to 10. So if you shot it in less than a second, let's give you lots of points. All right, Shift Tab to go back. Else if attack speed is less than or equal to 2 seconds, let's go ahead and give you 5 points. So we're going to say set earned points equals 5.0. All right. Else if, one more else if, attack speed is less than or equal to 3.0, we'll say set earned points equals 3.0. Now, you may be wondering, if you're new to programming, wait, but less than or equal to 2, that would be 1. And same thing here. Well, the thing is, we'll never get to these ones if it got to this one first. So it's going to start in the top, go to the next one, go to the next one. So we don't have to worry about the lower numbers by doing less than or equal to. Meaning we don't have to say if it's greater than 1 but less than this. We don't have to do that because this one would have already failed if we're over here. Okay, and if it took more than 3 seconds, you really stink at this game and you're just getting 1 point. Okay, what I really should do actually is say else if attack speed is greater than or equal to 5.0, like so. We should say earned points equals 0.0, set earned points. You get penalized if you're real slow. You don't get 1 point for just taking your time. Okay, so that's pretty cool. We got our earned points there. So the idea is that we add that onto a score. But it looks like we don't have a scoreboard on here. So let's do that now. Let's go ahead and say var score of type float equals 0.0. We'll start off with 0, okay? That looks good to me. So we're going to give ourselves a nice little score there on the scoreboard every single time. The only thing we haven't done yet is added the score. So we're going to say set score plus equals earned points. So take the current score and then add the earned points onto it and put it back into the score to update our score. That's pretty awesome. So it's going to upgrade our score every time, and we should be able to print that score and be able to see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and save this and go back over here to our project. And it looks like we only made some code changes, so I should be able to go to verse build code. Let's give it a test. Score 0, 5, 10, 20. Okay, looks like it's doing something. So let's wait a long time on this one. I think the last score said 55, so this should give me nothing. Yeah, that's nothing. That's 60. Excellent. This looks like it's working pretty good. Let's just do a couple more things to clean it up and make this a better game here. So I'm going to go back to our program here. And first things first is let's just set us up a nice little billboard so we can see what we're doing here. So in devices, I'm going to type in billboard, drag it in. It looks like I'm going to need to rotate it like so. There it is. You can see the sample text on it. I'm going to put it up against the wall. I'm going to do R to scale it way bigger, like so. And what do I want to do? Show a border? Oh, a nice little chalkboard. I like that. So that's good to me. And then I wonder if I can make the font bigger on our little scoreboard here. And in fact, probably a lot bigger. And text justification is center. I like that. And that looks good. And how about text color? Black. Black seems to stand out. Well, the white stands out good too. Okay. And then so this would look like, it would say, probably score. And then it would say something like, whatever, 55 or something like that. Okay. And I can make the text even bigger. 24 is the biggest it goes there. Okay. And Roboto. There we go. Nice and bold. Looks good to me. Oh, an outline. Oh, look at that. Getting fancy. Okay. Enough with that. So there's our score. And so what I want to do is go back into our code. And we're making a real game here, so we need to do some real things. Logs aren't enough. We'll say at editable var, and we'll say score billboard. And we'll call this billboard underscore device equals billboard underscore device. If I control click billboard device and scroll down, you're going to see something here that says set text. And it's looking for something called a message. You can't just pass a string into it. We need to have an actual message. So let's use a message. You also use these for user interface in UEFN. So I'm going to say score text. And we have to use a special little attribute here, or specifier, called localizes. Localizes. Did I spell it right? There we go. And then parentheses, this is where we're going to pass data into it. It's like a function. I'm going to say score message of type string, like so. And then this is of type message equals score colon score message closing quotes. Now, if you're new to programming, this may be very confusing. Really, we're just creating this function here that returns a message, and we're just doing an inline instantiation really right here at the top level. It's kind of confusing, but if you just memorize the syntax, this is how you can create variables for messages, and you're going to work with these a lot with user interface, okay? If this is confusing for you, forget about it. I debated really hard on showing this right now, but I needed to show it so we could update our text. So this is the syntax, and we're going to pass in a string to update the score. That's all that's happening on here. So we should just update the score whenever we actually update the score. So where our print statement was. So let's delete that. And it was called score billboard dot set text, and this is where we're going to call that score text up here, okay? And what we can do here is say, in fact, just to show you before we do this, what I can do here with the score text is I can say score text like so, and then this is where I can put in my string that it's asking for. So new score, actually we'll just say the word score. Score, colon, and what do we pass in here? We're going to pass in the score variable. Okay, it's going to convert it to a string for us. So all we're doing right here is updating the score text. We're updating this right here. Okay, that's all we're doing. And then right here, we can pass in the score text like so. But I'm just going to do this all on one line so it's not taking up so much space. So inside these parentheses, I will paste what we just did. Okay, we just updated the score text, and on the billboard, we're giving it that text. And let's go ahead and test this now to make sure everything is working as it should be. Build verse code, select our game manager, select our billboard in our score billboard, save, and push changes. Here we go. So we didn't put a 0 on first on here, which we probably should do. Pick up the weapon. Score 0. Score 5. 8. 23. There we go. So it appears to be working. It looks pretty good to me. Now, two more things I want to do is turn this into a real game. I don't think it's really fair that the game just starts and we already start losing time because the bear's already there and we didn't even get a chance to start. So we've got this item spawner here. And if you scroll down on the item spawner, on item picked up, so we can actually listen for when that gun's picked up and start the game only then. Now that makes a lot of sense. So why don't we do that now? We'll go back into our code and we'll say at editable var, we'll call this weapon spawner of type item spawner equals item spawner device. And if I control click item spawner device, I got to control click this base class here, item picked up event. That's what we want, item picked up event. So in my on begin, right here, I say weapon spawner dot item picked up event dot subscribe. We'll say on weapon picked up, and I'm sure it's going to give me the agent as it usually does. So I'll just assume that without looking at the documentation, and my tabs are going crazy. Okay, on weapon picked up, it's going to take an agent of type agent. It's going to return nothing. And then what do we want to do when the weapon is picked up? It's only at that point that we want to show the next target. All right. Also, we probably want to make sure our billboard is updated appropriately. In the very beginning. So right here where it says score, let's just go ahead and update it right at the beginning so it shows our actual score on there, okay? Which will be 0 in the beginning, okay? So when the weapon is picked up, then we show the next target. Excellent. Now, the last thing I want to do is have a way to end the game. And what we would do is use an end game device, okay? So when we get, let's say, 100 points, then we can end the game. Or I'll just say 50 to keep it quick for testing. So what we want to do is have another editable in here, at editable var, and we're going to say end game device, colon, and then we're going to call this end game device equals end game device, like so. And every time that we update the score, what I would like to do, see if we should end the game or not, okay? So if we do end the game, then we'll put it right in here. So when we update the score, we'll say if score is greater than or equal to, we'll say 50.0. In fact, a better way to do this is to make an at editable that you can adjust later. Say var, we'll say win score of type float equals, we'll say 50.0. That way you or someone on your team could go into the editor and play around with the win score on there. And now with that win score on here, we say if score is greater than or equal to win score, what do we want to do? Well, we want to end the game, but we need the player who's going to end the game, which we haven't stored yet. So we can just quickly grab the player right here. What we'll do is we'll say all players, colon equals, get play space, dot get players. So that's a built-in function to get all of the players. And then we're going to do a loop or a for expression to go through those players. So for each player, that's our variable name, in all players, so it's going to loop through, okay? For each player in all players, what do we want to do? Well, these all players here is a player, but the end game device wants an agent. But luckily, a player actually is an agent, and so we can cast it. And so what we'll do is we'll do an if statement here, if agent colon equals, so agent's our variable name, and we're going to use the agent class here, okay? And we're going to use these square braces and try and cast the player to an agent, try and convert it. But because it is an agent, it will work. And then so the first thing we'll do here is we'll say end game device dot activate, and then we will pass in the agent that it's looking for. Now we are in a for expression, and it would go through all of the players and do this, but since there's only one player, it's only going to find one, and it's only going to end the game once, so we don't need to worry about anything else. But in a more complicated game, I might not, with more players, I might not do the code this way. So if the score is greater than or equal to win score, let's go ahead and end the game. Great, let's save this, and let's go ahead and go over to our Unreal Editor, build verse code, and let's click our Game Manager device. Win score 50, that's fine with me. End game device, I need to go ahead and select my end game device, which I don't have yet. So I'm going to type in end game device in my devices folder. And with that selected, okay, the winning team is going to be the activating team. So in the code, whatever team activated it, just like we did in code, that's the team that's going to end it, okay? And you can end the game or the round. In our case, we are going to just end the game, okay? And that looks good to me. So let's go back to our manager here, select the end game device, and lastly, the weapon spawner is the item spawner, because we want to trigger the beginning of the game to start only after we have our weapon and things are good to go. Let's go look at our code one more time though, because I think that may go a little bit too fast. So when we go to on weapon picked up, we're immediately showing the next target, what I'd like to do is make the game a little more balanced and have a delay in here. So I'm going to type in delay as a function parameter of type float. And then what I want to do is I want to sleep for that delay, like so. But it won't work because we don't have the suspends modifier on here. So what I'm going to do is type in suspends like so, show next target, and then whenever we call show next target, we can put whatever delay that we want. So when the weapon is picked up when the game first starts, I'd like to maybe do a delay of like, let's say 3 seconds. Notice how it's still giving us an error, and that's because we have not used spawn. So I'm going to type in spawn here and then press tab, which is going to throw this on a separate thread so we don't get blocked up here. Now, whenever the prop's damaged, how much time do we want to wait before it appears again? I think 1 second is probably good enough. And we'll need to spawn that as well too. Just so it's not instant. That looks good to me. Okay, let's go ahead and build verse code, and I'm just going to push all the changes this time. Pick up the rifle. So I shoot it, but you know what's happening is it's actually waiting for 2 seconds. So the delay is nice for the gameplay, but the problem is we aren't hiding it the second that it has been attacked. So back here in the editor, let's look at our prop manipulator. And in fact, I'm going to move some of these things into our game folder. Right click, not the level bounds, right click into the game folder, and game device and billboard also move into the game folder. I like to keep my managed items separate from the environment. In our prop manipulator, if I go down here, I have the ability to show props and to hide props. And that's what I would like to do. I would like to show the props and hide them. So I'm going to go back to my code. Whenever we want to shoot a prop or the bear, we want it to immediately disappear. Okay? So let's go ahead and do that now. So we would do that on prop damage. So right here, right when the prop is damaged, let's just go ahead and hide it. So we're going to say prop manipulator dot hide props. Okay? Then notice how we say show next target and then there's a delay. So scrolling down here in show next target right after the delay, that's when we would want to probably show the prop, or in fact show the prop after it's moved right here. So after prop dot teleport to. So let's go ahead and right here is where we can say prop manipulator dot show props, and let's save that. Verse, build verse code, push verse changes. Let's give it a shot. Almost to 50. One more shot. There we go. The game ended. Okay, excellent. We've done a few things here. I know it's a simple game, but you did build a game from start to finish, and you did a lot of crazy things here. You worked with variables. You worked with the @editable attribute that connects your code to UEFN. You worked with scores. We worked with variables in the past, and now you actually get to see them in action with scores and a billboard and a prop manipulator. And we actually did some math here where we see how fast the player attacked. We gave them a better score based on the attack. We worked with delays and suspends, and we teleported props, and we worked with vectors. A lot of stuff here, and this is just the beginning, scratching the surface. If you'd like more just like this, click that subscribe button, and I will teach you how to write code and make
all the craziest games that you could ever want to make until your dreams come true.
That's it.